I've often found in life that we wait for the perfect time for us to step into something new or take on a new adventure. We often impose this limitation of the perfect time where we want to wait for permission from something or someone somewhere. We wait for it to be near the perfect celestial alignment or something to make progress on our dreams. And in all reality, we know deep down that it's never going to be the perfect time. It doesn't exist. And someone's always going to find fault with everything in anything that you do. Just start today. Don't wait. Your purpose doesn't need permission.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. You won't get to choose how long you're here. You won't know how many sunrises you have left. You don't get to rewind, pause, or skip the hard chapters. All you get is now. This moment, this breath, and most people waste it. Waiting for the perfect timing, for clarity, for permission.
For those of us living a life where our purpose doesn't need permission, capturing fulfillment and meaning in every moment we're alive. This is the Live This Life podcast. I'm your host, Heath Cummings. I'm here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every day. Are you living? Or are you killing time? What's going on, guys? Welcome to Live This Life Season X. I am your host, Heath Cummings, and today I'm going to dive in on one of the things that many of us have trouble finding, and that's purpose. We go through such a long process in our lives to figure out how this world works and exactly what our place is going to be in it. You know, the first 15 or 20 years or so of our lives, we're just trying to figure out our place in this world and how to stay alive, essentially. You know, what relationships look like and just basically trying to figure out how to function outside of maybe our parents' nests later on in our teen years. And we just try to find our way in this world. And once we figure out what we're going to do to sort of support ourselves and earn income, that is once we're, I guess, supposed to have found our way into adulthood and how to be a contributing member of society and all that, we define our purpose by our role that we play sometimes, whether it's going to be a job or some other societal programming and implementation of what that role looks like. So, you know, just think about it. When you first meet someone in life, they often ask you, what do you do? And instead of listing the things that we enjoy, what our hobbies are and our loves and our passions and the things that we do to really feel alive in life, we often just start listing the things that we do for an occupation or how we spend a majority of our days. We identify so much with our jobs and what we do and our titles and everything. Many of us aren't fortunate enough to say, when we're asked that question, I live my purpose. So what do you do? What do you do to actually say that to somebody? How do you get to that point in life where that is your response? Finding fulfillment in our day-to-day actions is a whole other thing. You know, spending our time on something that lights us up day in and day out is like the dream for everybody. At least it should be. You know, something that doesn't just provide that paycheck, something that at the end of the day, it really helps our soul feel a sense of accomplishment, I guess. Like something was really done with our precious minutes that we pour into our lives at the end of the day when we put our head down on the pillow. And I identified in my own life so much with what I've done for an income. You know, at certain times with a couple of big adventures that I had in my life, in my previous career path, you know, I felt like I was good at it. And it was like a righteous enough cause of what I was doing. And, you know, I went into it impacting the world or thinking that I was going to impact the world in a positive way. And, you know, I guess the role that got played throughout that career was part of a persona and a lifestyle. And it was one that I look back on now and realize that it wasn't in resonance with who I was really at my core. Even throughout all those years, it was almost like I was playing a role that just didn't fit. I had to sacrifice so much of really who I was in my core for such a long time. And essentially, it took like an act of God, like literally, Source had to intervene in my life and break me down and build me back up so I could shed that false self, so I could even identify it and realize that the disharmony in life was coming from that disresonance of who I was at my core. And, during those times, there were other passions in my life that I felt like I guess I wasn't even really allowed to explore because they were outside of that box that I was putting myself in by that role, the limitations that I allowed to be put on my life by who I was trying to identify as. You see, so often in our lives, we find out that we are sitting there waiting for permission to step into something that we really dream about doing, a new adventure, a new path in life, whatever it is, something that really lights us up, and we're just often not doing it. We're scared. We're imposing that limitation of maybe like the perfect time, like some sign's going to come in and be delivered to us to tell us like now you can officially live your dream. Sometimes we're waiting for someone's permission as well. Like we require somebody's blessing to live the life that's good for us. We wait for some perfect celestial alignment to get into place so that we can live the life of our dreams. In all reality, we know that all of this isn't true. And I'll tell you a little secret. The time's never going to be right. It'll never be that quote unquote right time. Someone's always going to find fault in what you want to maybe do. They're always going to disapprove. They're going to give critiques, make you feel like maybe what you're trying to dream of is ridiculous. They're going to rain on your parade. And I'm here to tell you today in this episode that your purpose, it doesn't need permission. And that's the thread that we are going to unravel on this one. I've often found that we wait for that permission to step into what lights us up, that new path and that dream that we find that's basically deep in our core and it's just humming at our bones. We cling to a mirage of this perfect time, like it's going to show up or some blessing from the stars, and like the cosmos owes us some sort of map to get us to where we want to go. But the truth, it cuts deep. That time, it never arrives, no matter how long you end up waiting for it. It's really a shadow that we cast on ourselves. There's always someone ready to judge, to dim your light, to pour cold water on your fire with their disapproval. And, I carried that weight myself, that hesitation, that fear of judgment and everything, until a certain moment really turned the tide for me just recently. I was at a wedding for my big sis, and it's a story that's still echoing with me that inspired this episode. And it really was a crack in the armor for me that let in some light. And it was a huge revelation about why we stall and how we can break free from that cycle. This episode is about that liberation from that cycle. It's about claiming your purpose without a nod from anybody. It's a call to let that inner fire roar. But before we get down to the bone on this one and dive into the marrow, I want to pause for you guys, the heartbeat of this journey. Your words really do pierce the quietness of the other side of this microphone, because you can sit here and you can talk into this all the time and you're not even sure how many people are even listening on the other side. And it's great to hear feedback from the listeners. It's great to hear from you guys in whatever ways I possibly can. Your support, the messages you send, the things that you put on social media, the DMs that I get on different social media apps and stuff. It's awesome. It's great to hear the feedback, and it really does mean more than you might realize. And I'm going to read a couple of them real quick. I'm still trying to find my way through, and when I see some things that have come through in the last few months, I try to grab the screen grabs so that I can address them at a later time. So these couple just come from a particular string on Instagram that was from the episode that I posted back in June of 2025, basically closing up season 5, saying where I just disappeared to at a moment's notice, and basically said I had to take off for a while to get my stuff straight. And a couple of great comments that people send. So the first one I will read is from an account called The Homestead, and they wrote, "You brought many people clarity while you were gone. While healing yourself, you were still healing others. There is no greater gift. Your podcast began a healing journey for me I would never have expected, and I truly wouldn't be where I am at today, nor would my husband. Thank you for pushing through the darkness for yourself and choosing to share it to help others." I very much appreciate that one. It's great to hear things like this where you're kind of opening people's eyes up, because that often leads to other people and other things and other avenues where they're improving their lives. So in whatever way that people sort of start on a healing journey and open up their eyes toward things that ultimately brings them more fulfillment in life, no matter how it goes, it's a great thing to see anybody doing it in any way, and to know that this show had a part in that. It means more than anything to me. So thank you for that one. I'll read another one. This one's actually from Lauren Wyckoff, somebody who I have actually looked at their content and been enlightened and brought up at times myself when I was kind of feeling down. Lauren writes, stepping away to get healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically can sometimes be the wisest thing you can do. Happy for you. Keep shining. So again, thank you, Lauren, and keep shining yourself. Your content's very uplifting stuff. If you guys aren't following that account, I'm going to try and link all these in the show notes, just because all three of these people are, they're great. They follow things. I think people who follow along with this podcast might enjoy their stuff. So if you're on Instagram, go follow these three folks. I'll link their accounts. And this one I know personally, Mr. Walt McKinley, my man. He's been on the show before, has a best-selling book on Amazon and everything. Not sure if he's still in the podcasting world. I think he's definitely stepped away from social media. Good for you, pal. Going out there and living your life instead of being on the screens is a great thing. Walt writes, great to see you took the time to reset, brother. Pretty significant to embrace the vulnerability and come back stronger than ever, especially in your marriage too. I've been there, and I know when you recommit how beautiful marriage can be. And that is so true, my man. The breakdowns, as awful as the one that went by last year was, it ultimately led to my greatest version. Ultimately, it was a breakdown that if this was the end result and this was the life that I'm getting out of it and the amount of enjoyment that I'm getting, then so be it. And the relationship that I was able to cultivate on the backside of it is just something that I didn't even know was possible. So, yeah, don't ever give up hope. And you never know when you're at your lowest and you take a break and you can reset yourself. You never know what sort of beautiful things life might have in store for you. It's kind of a destiny that you fulfill yourself. So take that time and reset like I did. And Walt agrees with that one. So thank you, brother. I got to reconnect with you at some point. It has been way too long since we've had our clubhouse chats back in the days with all the whole gang together. So again, I appreciate all those comments. So anywhere you want to leave those comments, I will try to see them and snip them, and I will read them on the show. Leaving the ratings and reviews on places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify will help us reach new listeners. There is that huge sea of podcasts out there of over 4.5 million shows. And we just recently, in the last couple of months, during the hiatus between seasons, jumped up 100,000 spots to break the top 75,000 shows worldwide. So that's because of people like you. You guys share the show, you talk to people about it, and leaving the ratings and reviews on those sites. If you follow along with the show on any one of those places, it will help reach new listeners. Go ahead and follow along on YouTube and wherever else we're at. And also head to livethislife.org and join that mailing list. That is the call to action that I have for you all today. You can get exclusive bonus videos from me a couple of times a month and sort of a sneak peek at upcoming episodes, maybe some bloopers, behind the scenes stuff that I don't really put on social media. All of it's completely free. It's just more of a little bit of a community. And there's going to be more things to come on that mailing list as well. I'm going to have some exclusive one-on-one offers for some of the people, different drawings for different things, and some coupon codes for the Live This Life store, which I'll drop a quick one on that one as well. We're adding new things very often. A few new things just got put on this week, including an entire line of items that are sporting the title of today's episode, which is sort of the new theme of the podcast going forward, is purpose doesn't need permission. Wearing it like a banner in your fight of this game of life. That's where all the ideas for all these things that are in the store come from, is just some inspirational messages and some great swag that helps support one of your favorite podcasts out there. So check out the store, get some stuff, fuel the pod. That fire of purpose that I spoke of, it really does look different for everybody. It's sort of a flame that dances in its own way. It really has its own color, its own hue, its own individual brightness. And that brightness can vary for every one of us at different times, for different reasons and different people. And this summer, shortly after recording the closing episode for season 5, that fire was burning in me pretty well at that point. You know, I used it to light some other people's fires as well. And, you know, I don't think it was sort of in a way that I even expected that it would pop up in life. It was really, I don't know, I guess it wasn't a major revelation. It wasn't because of like a major project or anything. Like it was in really a small way that as I sat on it and thought about it, it just built this spirit like, well, yeah, if I can give that advice to somebody else, and if this thing, you know, if I'm telling them to like, don't worry about the judgment. Don't worry about when the time is right. Just like the time is right now. It's now all the time. Like just jump to it now. And that scale, realizing that is just, doesn't matter how big or small the thing might be. It's just like time's short, man. Just get it done. Just start today. Start a small part of it today. That was one of the best pieces of advice I could even give myself, because it mattered, I think, so much in this conversation. But afterwards, thinking about that conversation, how good it felt, it started to resonate for me as well. So I was at my sissy's Chandra at her wedding this summer, and the interaction that we had, it still reverberates to this day. You know, my lovely wife was the one who actually was the catalyst in it. And we were sitting with a couple that we had never met before. And I'm assuming that we were probably put in the table, at the table with them together in this sort of sea of people, seemingly strangers just plopped at this table because they were from outside the area, and we were likely paired with them because we can literally talk the feathers off a bird if we have the chance. So, you know, them not knowing anybody and us, doesn't really matter who you are. And if we don't know you, we'll still just yap it up with you. We got to knowing them over the conversations and everything over the night. And as we started to deepen in conversation throughout the evening, they asked if our son, who was actually with us, if he was our only child. You know, he was just on the cusp of 18 years old at the time. And we explained, yeah, he's our only one. And, you know, it was maybe a blessing in disguise. The opportunity to have a second one was taken away from us in our 20s by cancer. But that was a blessing in disguise, because, you know, maybe a second one on a marriage that was going through some ups and downs at the time, on top of us being a couple of kids ourselves who had a lot of healing to do on our own. A second kid might have been just a little bit maybe too much, and it just ultimately wasn't part of our journey. And so that's what the universe delivered. And we just saw that as a blessing for what it was, and just made the best with the situation we had, and poured every bit of our parenthood into a kid who just turned out to be a phenomenal human being. And, you know, seeing that vulnerability from two people that were basically strangers to them, you know, maybe it was a little bit refreshing to them or something. I'm not sure, but, you know, their own voices kind of thickened with the stigma of having only one kid themselves, and the world's sort of unyielding demand for more. But yeah, I'll keep the names out of this one, just because some people just aren't about putting everything out there in public. But the wife of the couple, she had sort of, I don't know, I guess you'd say like an air of expectation in her eyes. Like there was a world of expectation looking at them, and sort of a bit of a silent cry for permission to release a bit of the thoughts that were brewing about that subject, the whole subject at hand. And the hum of the celebration that was going on around us just kind of like faded away, and we just got into this conversation kind of deep. And, you know, her partner kind of shifted a little bit uncomfortably at the same time. And, you know, her words got a little heavy with the weight of other people's expectations. And, you know, that weight can be heavy with family and friends and society all sort of pressing down on us to have more kids when you're in a marriage. And it's like, okay, well, when you're going to have your next one, when are you going to have your next one? And it's almost like it becomes a benchmark of what it means to have a family. And in this conversation, I could just kind of see like a fire igniting within them. And I could also see a fire igniting in my wife. And, you know, she is like the perfect definition of just the light in the dark. You know, she uses her light to brighten up so many other people's days on such a regular basis. It's why so many people absolutely love her. And when you use that light to light up someone else's world, it doesn't do anything dim your light. It doesn't take any of the power of your flame away. Your flame doesn't dim at all. If anything, it just gets brighter and it spreads light in the room. And that's exactly what she does. And it's what she did in this particular moment. And in that moment, she kind of like leaned forward when we were talking about this. And she said, if that's not what's for you, then you have my permission to say no, if that's not what you want. And it was sort of a half joking smile, but it was also sort of like a lean in, and it was a very sort of serious assertion. Like, you need someone's permission? Here's mine. You don't need it, but you don't have to do anything that's not for you. And it was just sort of like a serious moment in a conversation. I think we were trying to keep somewhat lighthearted because it was kind of a deep one. And the laugh sort of broke the tension a little bit, but there was sort of a bit of contemplation that went along with it, like something real beneath it all. And you could tell that it kind of took root. And it wasn't even our approval that they needed or could even receive, honestly, because it was already theirs to claim on their own. It was a power that they'd buried under the weight of other people's expectations and their gazes. And it was a power that I'd realized after this conversation that I too had buried myself. And it was just something that I just couldn't let go once I realized it. It's the shadow that I started stripping away that day. And it's the one that we're going to be stripping away today, layer by layer. It's just a veil that we often weave ourselves that shrouds our purpose and passion in the expectations of life and the expectations of other. And those things often don't resonate with us at a soul level. And it brings a lot of discord in our lives. It takes away from our enjoyment so much of life when we could be experiencing the absolute complete opposite. We wait for that perfect alignment, like I said before, the decree from the stars or something. But the universe, it remains silent. As much as you're waiting for that loud bellowing voice from God to come raining down, it doesn't ever actually happen that way. Sort of the vast darkness that's out there sometimes when you're sitting there laying underneath the stars, all those things that are just going on out there. Crazy stuff. Galaxies are colliding and exploding and fading without a whisper. The stars are born and die in that moment that you're sitting there looking up the sky. And we often wait for something to come out of all of that magnificence. And it's much more subtle than that. And it's much less grand than that huge thing that we're waiting to come jumping out of the clouds at us, and a voice that's just going to bellow down and say, okay, now I permit you to do the thing that you want to do for the rest of your life. And sometimes we wait for, the words from someone that we kind of trust, someone to tell us something that we feel good about. And sometimes we're just sitting there squirming at the pressures and the discordant feelings that come from opinions that just we don't resonate with. And then sometimes we hear that message and it feels right and it brightens our flame. And it's like, that's the one that we need to let sit there and brew. It's sort of something that is a silent pulse that all of a sudden we get our finger on, and we can feel that pulse start to pulsate when we hear those words that do sort of grant us permission. And ultimately, we already have those words deep down inside us. And that's the crazy thing. It's like we have to hear someone else's voice say it first, but it was already there. And I felt that stall myself for decades. Once I came to grips with this exact thing, I realized I actually realize everywhere that I've kind of tripped myself up along the way. There's regrets that I have from dreams I didn't chase. And no matter what it was, whether it was, I guess, trips that I could have taken when I was in the boxing world and I got invited to do some of these big, great things. And I just kind of made the excuses not to go along with some of them for the sake of, I don't want to mess my brain up and get healthy. It's like, just go on the trip, do the thing. I guess that's a kind of a bad example because I was trying to maintain my safety, but I also realized at a certain point I was kind of just making excuses for something that was, I guess it felt silly and frivolous. Even when it comes down to episodes that I didn't record and more opportunities I could have taken with this podcast early on when it really started to first accelerate, I let other ventures in life that I thought were more righteous or, more important, more responsible, I guess at the time, take precedent over my life. Things that I left under the weight of, I guess, not yet, relationships that I let fade away, friends that I missed contact with, that those great friends that you cannot see for years. And you reconnect with them and realize it's like, man, why did we fall out of touch and let our relationship fray like an old rope or something? All those ambitions, all those different things just sort of slip away like sand in your fingers. So it was a moment of realizing, like, yeah, I've done it too. Life's too short and it's way too fragile. It's it's like just a breath of air that you breathe out that just gets taken away in the wind. And life is just exactly that same exact way. But every one of those breaths is completely full of life. It's not something that can just be moved on and taken away. It is precious. It just matters how much value and emphasis you put into the breath that you have that's still left in your lungs. And the same thing with that flame. Like, you can breathe life into that flame, or you can let it die. You can let it shrink down. You don't want to waste that fire when you have it. If anything, you try to make every one of those breaths, every one of those moments, every one of those small exhales, stoke that fire every single day. And instead of letting the stress of life blow out that flame like a giant huff out there, you can do something to stoke that fire. It's your choice. It comes in some of the silent moments, but it's not in sort of the silent moments that some people think that people might be talking about. I talk about a lot of the silent moments of my own, but those silent moments aren't just sitting there in silence and just trying to get your mind nowhere. Some of them are very intentional. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to put into the message of today. Buddhism and Taoism both have these concepts of no thought and no mind, which I guess you could compare those to a fasting of the mind. And those do have good value. I mean, there is some great value in not having anything on your mind, to just get a mental detox. So just like you do with food, when you detox from food and you fast, it can help your body purge of toxic substances and, I guess kind of reset everything that's going on. And those sort of no thought meditations that everybody sort of has the concept of what meditation is like, it's kind of the same concept. But it's like any other regimen that you might have in your life. It's, if you want to be healthy, if you're just a runner, then you can just run all the time. They have a specific build, and if that's your thing, then great. As much as I realize the value of running and stuff, it results in a very sort of slender body. It's not exactly what I would be looking for. I like to have the muscular strength that goes along with it. I vary my workouts very much. I'll do strength training. I'll do some cardio stuff. I'll do a lot of boxing. I'll do yoga at times and do stretching and do different body weight exercises. Like, you vary your physical health in such different ways to confuse the body and do different benefits at different times. And your mind benefits from the same type of thing. When you do these no thought meditations, they have their benefit. When you can do things like the biofeedback stuff. I have a muse that I use to get biofeedback when my brain gets busy and try and calm the mind that way. So it helps flex this muscle of like pushing thoughts out of your mind. And then there's also ones where you're actively meditating and you got maybe a subject on your mind. You got something you want to try and figure out. You got something that is sort of getting at you, and the busyness of life and the distractions that happen don't let you take that thought fully from start to finish and figure out in what direction you want to take it. So when you have one of those types of things on your mind, you sit down in those quiet moments, maybe with a journal or a notebook or something, and you just actively think from one side to the other. What exactly is it that I want to figure out with this thing? And finding our passions can sometimes come from those moments. You get into the silence and you think about what could light you up, and then you start to travel down this road of, what does that actually look like for real in life? I love this thing, but realistically, what does it look like in my life? I've got responsibilities. I got bills to pay. I can't just go and disappear and go to a monastery or whatever it is that might be the passion that you want to pursue in life. You kind of sit there and you sit in the feelings of what that whole thing might look like, and you process them in silence. And you think about nothing but that thing. So, don't constantly think that meditation has to be like this Zen thought. I mean, Tom Brady, I saw one of his documentaries and stuff, and he wasn't big on it. Giselle, when they were together, she was, he wasn't. He gets to get his meditations a lot from when he's on the field. He does a lot of it when he was surfing, and it's just sort of an active process. The mind cuts everything out, and you can sort of figure things out. I got a lot of that from boxing myself, because it's hard to focus on the stresses of life when you're literally just focusing on putting a fist on somebody and avoiding their fist being put on you. And your mind sort of goes clear and all the troubles of the day sort of fade away. So I would use the times to cleanse the stress and get it out and do those things. Do that one particular exercise to have that one particular purpose. So actively meditating on something can ignite that fire. You can journal what comes through. You can jot a line of poetry if that's your thing. If it's something that comes up in the middle of the night, you can wake up in the middle of the night and pull out a book and you can start writing things down for even 5 or 10 minutes and fall right back to sleep. No matter what that dream of life might look like, even if it seems silly or unreasonable, it seems out of reach or frivolous or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If it's something that is the dream of your life and it would light you up and it's literally what would make this life the most enjoyable, then why not just see where that might go? Those feelings are thoughts, and essentially thoughts are just a single dimension. It is something that doesn't even really actually exist. And when you take that and you go and put it on a piece of paper, it brings it from that first dimension to a 2-dimensional piece of paper. Now, instead of it being somewhere out there and it's just in a thought realm, you've actually brought it here into physical form, and you can revisit it. You can read it over again and you keep building on it. It's something that actually brings it into the tangible physical existence. You can plant a seed in the cold earth and you can watch it break through that dirt with sort of a stubborn vigor for life. I mean, if you know what seeds actually go through during the winter, they burst through frozen layers of dark soil that looks seemingly lifeless and there's nothing there. And that seed goes from that dormancy and powers through from this tiny little thing to what can turn into a gigantic, powerful oak tree that lives for centuries. And your life is kind of the same way. It's just a dormancy that's waiting to erupt when the time is right. And I don't care what that flame of passion looks like in your life. It's not all about that huge grand venture that people feel like they need to have. They have to have a huge game plan. They have to have this business plan. They have to have this thing to have a passion or a purpose. And it's not even about that. If it's a fear that you've even needed to confront for years, you can step in front of that fear, because sometimes that fear is blocking so many other things in your life. You've got a trauma that's unhealed. It can sit there and it can pull the strings behind the scenes, and it has whispers of things in your ears like you're not enough and you're not good enough, and all these different things that can be catalysts in your life to hold you back. They create self-imposed limitations sometimes because you can do something about them. They're just in the scenes back there pulling the strings. And even if that's the thing that you end up moving on in life, that's good enough. If your passion is trying to heal from some of the stuff that happened in your life, go for it. I want to share a little bit of an inspirational story on that subject. One that's kind of close to my heart. One that it's about stretching yourself into and past your supposed limits and pursue something that's amazing in your life. I want to, give a shout out to someone who's real special to me, that showed me that you can make life-changing decisions in your life that you don't even realize that are that valuable and life-changing until times later on. That small little move that I'm talking about making can show you what you're actually made of, and it can help you lift heavier weights and dig deeper than you've ever thought. This story is inspired by a tiny little firecracker who underestimated her own strength and perseverance and worth for a very, very long time, most of her life. Love of my life, my partner Sylvia, my lovely wife. She is one person who defies the term perseverance with where she's come from in life. She's overcome a lot of amazing things, and it's just one of the most inspirational people that I've ever met in my entire life. And she's gone through some very negative and restricting circumstances in her life, a lot of controlling things, and just wasn't able to pursue a life that she wanted to for so many different reasons, and was never really able to blossom and bloom like the way she was destined to. And a couple of years ago, I had brought up the fact that my son was growing up, and I was urging her to seek an identity that was away from just being a mom, because eventually that was going to come to an end where Mason would only really need us on a casual basis. He's going to be moving on with his own life. And if that reality smacked us when that time came around and we didn't prep for it kind of earlier, it could be a very harsh reality. I've seen it happen with a lot of different people who are very much identifying with parents. And when that comes to an end, it's like they have an identity crisis. They don't really realize who they are. And I just didn't want to see that happen. So, and we'll also admittedly say that during that time frame, it was probably not presented in some of the most caring ways. It was definitely presented in a way that was, I think, more tough love than anything. Like, you got to do something. You got to get out there. You got to become more than just Mason's mom. You got to be more than what I think you're allowing yourself to be, and not probably the delivery that I would have now. Just having the level of awareness and the things of the past year kind of behind me and experience. But ultimately, the result of that conversation was that she pursued dance as a 41, 42-year-old person. And it's something that she's been very passionate about her entire life, but it was very restricted from doing it as a child. So when she actually got into it, she found so much freedom and fulfillment. And although it was a ton of work, to add to an already full plate, to be, a mom, full-time job and all that kind of stuff, and also take on a dance degree at a prestigious college, like that's a huge amount of weight to put on the bar and expect to lift it. And then to go through the tumultuous stuff that we went through last year with the divorce, like near divorce, and still continue to do what she did. And not only that, make it through it, but get amazing grades, like get A's on her dance courses and stuff. It was just something I'm very much proud of. But it was great to see that passion unfold into this expression of what it ended up meaning for her and how much fulfillment I see her get out of it at a regular basis, and just have that passion in someone that you care about and see them go from really only having a passion of being just kind of a great mom and a great wife and everything, and doing the best that she could with that, but then also taking on this other role where it was like, this is her thing. It was hers to have, and it was hers to be proud of. And that's something that I wanted for her, and I want for so many people in life. And it was great to see it with the person that's closest to me. And it's like, yeah, man, if she can do it, so many other people can too. And I've done it so many times in my life, and it's just something that I wanted to inspire so many people to do it. And that's kind of I guess maybe a bit of an extreme case, just because not everybody who's in their 40s would be able to take on something that physically demanding. I mean, she's in amazing shape and has the ability to do that, but everybody has the ability to do something along those lines with whatever their passion might actually be. And if you let that unfold, you can awaken so many different things in your life and different avenues of what that could blossom into. And one thing I did want to talk about is that passion and purpose are two completely separate things, but they are really inexorably intertwined. It's, passion is that thing that lights up your soul. It's what you get excited about for that part of your life. Maybe when nothing else is going great in your day and, the daily grind almost grinds you to a halt and it drains your life force. This thing brings you back every single day. It brings you back up no matter what it is. When you're thinking about doing it, when you're doing it, the after effects of it lights up your life. And, it's just whatever it is, that's your passion. It can be so many different things. And when you pursue your passions, something extraordinary happens in your life. You get out of the mindset of just putting up with a dissatisfying life, and you start being lit up by that thing. Even if it's for small bits of your day, it's the anticipation of it, and it's the moments while you're in it. But then it starts to build on your life even more. You sort of light that fire, and it just starts to grow, and it just starts to grow and grow and grow. And you have that part of your life to look forward to, rather than the alternative of just work, eat, sleep, go to bed, repeat. You have this other thing that's in there that you get to be passionate about in your life, and you get excited for it because it's just in your awareness, and you start to align with that thing, and then all the other things that are associated with it. It could be dance, it could be podcasting, it could be your kids. I mean, kids are such a precious thing, and the enjoyment that comes from being with them is amazing. So, as I talk about these ventures, or, I talk about this extreme thing of being in your 40s and going and taking a dance course at a prestigious college and stuff, like, those are great examples, and they can be inspirational. And people might think like, oh, it's just my kids. I'm like, man, you realize how much of a privilege it is. If you don't have kids and it's not your thing, that is one thing. For those of us who have kids and we're parents and we actually love being parents and we got great kids, Kids are one of the most precious things in the world. I got a niece and nephew and a couple of nieces and one nephew and so many other younger relatives and stuff. And it's like, I miss my kid being young, but you still have these other little young ones around. And it's like, man, enjoy those times. They go by so fast, but the things that come out of their mouths, the fun that they have, the joy that they have, I don't know how someone can't have that as their passion if they're fortunate enough to experience those things. But whatever it is, if you have that in your awareness rather than the opposite, it gives you something in your life that really lights you up. And from that place of passion, it's sort of a pilot light can be lit and it can erupt into something. You never know. I'll use my own circumstances as an example. The case in point that I have is about 10 years ago. I first started to dive into the space of self-awareness and consciousness and sort of exploring all those things, fulfilling purpose and passion. I had already sort of been in the pursuit of all things sort of spiritual and looking for that spiritual connection since the second cancer case in 2010. And I was only 29 years old at the time. And I fell into this mindset of trying to discover the depth of life and really what that meant and sort of the first feelings of mortality when it started to set in for me. Because prior to that time, I was really feeling the complete opposite of mortality. I was feeling quite invincible for all 20 years prior to that, 29 years prior to that. And like literally at a certain extent, like the concept of my own demise wasn't something that I could even contemplate. Like it can happen to other people, but it doesn't happen to me. It can't happen to Heath Cummings. But, looking back on that time frame and that transition, I can totally see it now. I can see how somebody who I guess never experienced losses in so many different arenas and people who had a lot of close calls but never got actually taken, you could start getting that like sense of arrogance and invincibility, and the paradigm completely shattered. It went from one extreme to the other. And I sort of had an entire existential crisis at that time and discovering like, yeah, I can die too. So then if I can die, then man, this life is actually valuable. It's precious. I gotta discover everything I possibly can about it. Like, why are we here? What are we doing? What is our connection to source? Where did we come from? So I started exploring all of those types of ways to connect with God, source, universe. And I was reading books on religion and spirituality. And I found a whole bunch of different inspirational leaders who were some of the bigger names that were out there at the time, whether it was big people on social media, podcasting personalities. I mean, you've got the people who are out there having these conversations and, about God and source and everything. Neil Donald Walsh was a big one. Wayne Dyer, I've played his clips many times on the show. And then there were some up-and-comers who really influenced me along the way. Ralph Smart from Infinite Waters. I haven't seen him much anymore. A good friend, guy turned into a great friend of mine. Brandon Beecham from the Positive Head podcast. He's actually discontinued his podcast recently too after hitting some major highs. He's doing some amazing stuff. I got to get caught up with him soon too. I'm not sure if he actually listens to podcasts anymore, but if he is out there, Brandon, what's up? Got to get connected with you, brother. But I used to listen to those guys nonstop, and I literally stopped listening to music altogether, and I just had to get in there and figure this thing out. It became a huge passion for me. What are we doing here? It was a massive puzzle, or like a Rubik's Cube before the algorithm got all figured out. And like some of us who suffered back in the 80s with a Rubik's Cube couldn't figure it out. And I just couldn't figure out all these different avenues of where spirituality and purpose and all the amazing what ifs of life would take you down all these different rabbit holes. But I think a lot of people were doing just that. They were turning to mainstream religions and everything for that connection, and these spiritual leaders, and they start listening to these teachers, and they start realizing that some of the greatest connections to source that you can make are outside the walls of any building, and it comes to you in whatever way it's meant to, in moments of silence, in moments where you're welcoming that connection, no matter where you are, no matter what day of the week it is, no matter what building you're in. And as I rolled that passion into a gigantic snowball, I started to connect with the right people and started getting into the right circles, and I started having the right conversations, and that passion turned into a purpose when I dared to start this show. I did it on a dare, and Brandon Beecham was the guy who did it. And, it just continued to sharpen my skills from there, and my network grew, my skills grew as a podcaster, and my my life was fortunate enough to unfold to where it is now, or, get the ability to tell some great stories and just get on here and inspire people in whatever way that I possibly can. And that's how that passion turned into something that I discovered is likely going to be a major purpose in my life when I look back on everything, when it's all said and done, that it no longer was just a passion. And I found great purpose along with it. It was one of the most purposeful things I think I've ever found in my life. I think the only things that I've ever really felt an immense sense of purpose with was being, a husband. I think I'm blossoming into a good one now, where maybe points in my life I hadn't been from a very unhealthy place. Always really felt like I've been a great father. Maybe not setting the greatest example in certain areas, hard on myself, but I think for the most part, that has been a huge passion and purpose in my life. Law enforcement stuff, it definitely was something that I was passionate about, and I felt great purpose in that. There's lives that I saved and lives that I changed in that. And this, I think, maybe is just the next level of, as though some of those other things have sort of faded away, and maybe dialed down a little bit. I mean, I'll always be a dad, but just not as much as involved as I was in the younger years. This is stepping into that as being a very purposeful, respectful, and inspiring husband. First and foremost, is my most important job, I think, at this point. And letting this spin into something that has come from a passion and has turned into a purpose. So you just never know. You never know where some of those interests and stuff could turn into something much bigger. I've seen a lot of my own trappings, though, hold me back from this show. And those those things can sometimes get a bit scary when you first discover them. There's a bit of a fear of what could actually grow out of it. I mean, it's kind of strange to actually talk about that. It's actually strange to talk about how this show could have been a little scary at certain times. You go from, I guess, relative obscurity in life to going to places where you're like on vacation and people just know your name and know who you are. And don't get me wrong, like, I love all you guys. I have bumped into people in public and stuff like that, or like, hey, live this life. And I'm like, hey, it's like kind of weird, but it's kind of cool. So don't get me wrong. If you recognize me in public from the podcast or something, like, I'm totally down to say hi and chat and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely love it. Even if I might have that don't fuck with me look on my face, it's just my resting bitch face when I'm in public. And people can be really weird, even in some of my favorite places in the world. Even at the Cape Cod can still get a little bit weird sometimes. But I'm always down to have a conversation with cool people. But yeah, man, it is a little bit strange sometimes. You talk to people and they know so much about you because they listen to you on the microphone, maybe on a daily basis. And they get a sense to know you through the podcast, like an old friend that they talk to every day, but somebody you've never met in your entire life. It's strange, but it's super cool at the same time. But yeah, it's not a direction in your life I would have ever expected to go. And it can be a real trip. And it's something that, I hope it inspires people out there to think about what that passion and purpose might look like in their life and inspire themselves to let that unfold for them. Everything can really shift. The imposter syndrome was one thing that really held me back at certain times as well. That mindset where you really don't realize your worth and your value, and you sit there thinking that you don't deserve that amazing thing. Maybe once you discover maybe what that purpose and passion might actually be, you sit there and finally, after digging in and trying to figure out what it is, you dig in and say, well, nah, that can't happen to me. Like, I don't know enough stuff. Like, I'm not worthy enough. I'm not smart enough to do those kinds of things. This isn't even a legitimate enough dream to try and invest time into. People are going to think I'm stupid. And that's really not what it's all about. It all shifted for me at a certain point. And, once I looked at it from the outside, my view of myself was me looking out and fearing the eyes that were looking back at me for so long, if that makes any sense. The view from my own eyes, and looking at the eyes of judgment going back at me. And I think that's what held me back. And the shift was that I actually had to really look at myself from the viewpoint of what others around me really saw. What did they actually see? And not what do I think they see? Like, what is the actual see? Because if I think they see somebody who's not worthy, if I have this misconception and overlay these things that aren't true, that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. If I see what's truly there, someone who loves what they do, makes a good product. People like what I do. And, maybe it's not for everybody. I respect that. People, they might not like it. This has still become a craft. And I'm proud to say that it's something that I enjoy doing, and I know that I'm fairly good at it as well. And I shifted my belief system just by realizing that, accepting it, and giving that gift to myself, and realize that I'm worth doing this, and it's a worthy cause at the same time. And that's something you need to do for yourself. If you're selling yourself up, and you're maybe really don't have the creds legitimately, and you kind of know you're bullshitting the world, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different episode. I think that's not what I'm talking about. But if you know there's something you want to do, and maybe you're just a little bit scared and you got to build things up, you start small. If that passion excites you, you just do something small, and don't make it about making money either. That was the other thing I want to mention, was make sure that you're not doing it to make the buck. Like, I'm going to start a podcast and make $1 million. Like, yeah, sounds great. I've been at it for 5-6 years now, and definitely not making any sort of heavy ching from it. And most of the time you won't. This is, it is what it is. And your passion is going to be sort of the same exact way, but don't do it for the sake of making money. Do it because it's something that you love in life. If you have to make money for you to enjoy it, is it actually enjoyable? Like, that's a question you really got to dig down and ask yourself as well. What would you do if money was no object? That was one of the best pieces of advice that I got that helped me dig into what my passion actually was. If money was no concern at all, and you didn't have to worry about money, it was just you had enough of it, or money didn't even exist, whatever. If money wasn't a thing, what would you do with your time? And if it's your passion, then get at it. If you have this thing, you're already saying, I would do this, then that's your passion right there. Get at it and stay consistent with it. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Just do it so that it brings you joy. Don't get lost in the trying to make something of its space. Make moves, but don't let it control you. And I know it's easier said than done, because everybody wants to have some sort of an accolade in their life to say, hey, look at, I did this thing. Do it for you, and the rest will really follow. I guess that's the bottom line. And it might take a while. The how may eventually show its face, and I'm talking years. But when you know the why really deep down, the how stops being an excuse. Each move that you make can really carve a path forward in the void. And that's a lesson I'm still trying to trace with every single breath. It's a progress. It's a pilgrimage. It's not the massive leap that you might be imagining and fantasizing about in the quiet moments. It's not the grand gesture that you might be waiting for. It's the quiet, relentless, single step forward day after day. And so this episode, this moment right now, this is your call. Love your dream, whatever it might be, with sort of a fierceness that defies the noise, and a love that just sort of roars through the doubt. Paint a canvas that screams with your soul's truth, even if your hands might tremble with uncertainty and everything. Build that venture brick by sort of shaking, trembling brick. Peel back the layers with just courage, and feel that fire burning in your chest, and let it burn through the judgment of everyday life. The whispers that say you can't, or you shouldn't, or that you're not enough. And let it consume the fear that holds you back. Once that fire builds up, just let it burn it all up. Who cares what they think? The question is, if you have a mirror and you're holding it at your own life and looking at it, I guess challenge what that reflection actually looks like to you. If it feels like if it's something that's discordant, and ask yourself, what's going to make you feel good about that life? It makes you ask the question, are you living, or are you killing time? That question, it's haunted me through the sleepless nights sometimes. It's through the echoes of sometimes what might have been from moments I didn't move on things when I wish I did. And I got to say, some of those days are behind me. If something lights me up within reason, because the other thing I realized is not taking on, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And as much as I might want to change the world in certain areas, I've got to focus more on less amounts of things, pour myself into a smaller amount of things, and focus on those. But yeah, the weight of the days that I let slip away, you ultimately shed those things too, and you just start moving into that circle of passion. Dig into what that feeling looks like and dig deep down. Are you pouring your days into what sets you ablaze, honestly? Or are you letting them slip into sort of the abyss of life, just sort of unclaimed and wasted, and you have that sort of slow death of the potential that's kind of gone away? The path forward is yours to forge every inch, every single day. Sketch a vision of what your dream life looks like and what your passion looks like. And it's a vision that, I guess, is patiently waiting for your touch. Reach out to, a dream maybe you shelved in the corners of your mind, something that's knocking at the door waiting to come in. And let your soul roar with that purpose that's just uniquely yours, a purpose that doesn't bend to the world's clock. It doesn't wait for a sign, and especially isn't waiting for permission from an outside source. The only permission is the one that can be granted by you when you feel like the truth says it is time. So that's it. That's all I've got on this one. I hope the message is very clear. Your purpose is yours to seize now in life. Life is way too short and it's way too vast with so many possibilities in it. Life starts with a passion. It really does. And when you can find that, you can allow it to bloom. You're going to find some of the truest meanings of what it means to feel alive. And to feel that feeling, don't wait for permission to say, this is my purpose. Till then, keep that fire burning. We'll see you next time.